Welcome back to the Knife Studio. My name's Kyle Royer, and in this video, we're gonna go through the 1-month process of building this frame-handled feather fighter. To start this project out, we're gonna start our feather pattern Damascus for the blade and fittings. We're getting to a critical stage in the feather pattern making process. We're gonna take a tall tower of Damascus pieces, weld them all together, and then squish them in half with a big die. What that'll do is draw the center of the pattern down, and when we put it back together, it'll make the center of our feather pattern where it's kind of squished and comes together like a quill. Now that we've got our solid billet of feather pattern Damascus, we can cut slices off for the blade and fittings. The reason I don't forge the entire billet out into a blade is because it would distort the pattern if we drew it out so much. That's why we cut off slices and then do minimal forging so we don't distort that beautiful pattern we spent so much time getting into the steel. The feather pattern Damascus is finished. The blade's been rough ground and heat treated. It's now time to move on to final grinding, and there's a lot of it to do. It's time to put my mark on this blade. The process is really cool because we're actually going to use electricity to electrochemically eat away the steel underneath a stencil, and that'll leave a deep, permanent mark that stands out forever. The blade's done for now. It's time to move on to the handle and start with the Damascus fittings. I like to build my handle starting at the guard and then work my way back through the handle all the way down to the pommel. Now I'm making the pommel nut. This is the piece that holds the entire handle together. The knife will be a takedown design, meaning you can actually unscrew the pommel nut in the future if the knife ever needs maintenance or cleaned up, and take the handle apart and be able to make little adjustments or clean up the inside of the handle if you need to. I really enjoy making pommel nuts because I get to use the lathe, and that's always fun to use. And then making threads and stuff like that has always been a highlight for me. The handle on this frame-handled feather fighter is going to be made out of fossilized mammoth ivory from Russia. This stuff is ancient, and it can be really, really beautiful if you get a nice polish on it. All the pieces are finally starting to come together, and we have something that's starting to look like a knife handle. Something you might have noticed are some small pins sticking out of the fittings. The purpose of those pins is to act as lineup pins, and they make it so I can put the pieces together and take them apart, and everything indexes to the exact same place every time. Since this is a takedown knife and the construction of it requires me to be able to take it apart and etch the fittings and put it all back together the same every time, those lineup pins are invaluable in a project like this. Everything's coming together nicely. The blade has been shaped, all the components of the handle go together and come apart the same every time, and all the handle pieces have been shaped. It's now time to move on to the 24 karat gold wire inlay in the fittings. Now that the gold inlay's done, there's lots of hand sanding to do. We need to get the blade hand sanded and the fittings and the handle material. Since this fighter has Damascus fittings, we need to harden those fittings. The reason for that is because the fittings won't etch the same as the blade unless they're hardened the same as the blade. So I put anti-scaling compound on the fittings since they're finished and they're hand sanded already. We don't want any scale to form. So we put anti-scaling compound on there, harden and temper them the same as the blade after that. After etching the blade and fittings in ferric chloride, it's time to get the handle scales epoxied onto the frame. Being a takedown knife, the handle does come off the blade and the fittings come apart, except for the handle scales in the frame. Those are going to be epoxied together, and they're going to have 4 pins going all the way through to hold those together as one solid assembly. We're gonna put 4 domed Argentium Silver pins in this handle. Domed means that there'll be a little bit of a head sticking up on the handle, and it'll be kind of domed over with a hammer and look like a little tiny button. Argentium Silver is a special silver that has germanium in it, so it won't oxidize and tarnish very easily at all. There's one last thing we need to do before the final assembly, and that's to get a nice hair-popping sharp edge on this blade. It's no good to have a knife that looks good if it can't cut good. There you have it. This frame-handled feather fighter is finished, and I am super happy with how it came out. That fossilized mammoth ivory looks so good. It's got this beautiful sheen on it, and the feather pattern Damascus is killer. I will see you in the next video. May the forge be with you. Bye-bye!